Okay, cool. We're definitely live.
We're live. Awesome.
For anyone who is joining live, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let me pause this so I don't have this weird audio going back and forth. Cool. Oh, no, I didn't pause it. You can hear it, can't you? Okay. All right, let's do this. So, hey, everyone who's joining live to this month's Facebook Live in the Retreat Planner Hub Facebook group. Today, we are joined by Victoria Sass, and she's going to be talking to us about the rise of Mastermind Retreats, bonding, collaboration, growth, and profit. So a lot of good stuff. Quick bio on Victoria before we get started. She is the founder of RetreatProfits, whose mission is to help entrepreneurs scale and grow their business by incorporating luxury mastermind retreats. Victoria brings a decade of experience in financial services, working for investment banks in NYC, most recently at Goldman Sachs. She also shares her passion for travel, as she and her husband are digital nomads and have spent time traveling and living across the globe. So thanks for joining us, Victoria.
Thanks for having me, Keri.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I'll just jump right in, since I've already kind of bioed you, and ask you the first question on this topic. So starting with the word mastermind, RetreatProfits focuses specifically on helping entrepreneurs like plan and execute mastermind retreats. So we hear that word used a lot frequently in the business world, and I'm just curious, what does that mean to you? And like, why did you start the business too, kind of on that?
Yeah. I mean, starting with what it means to me, there's really like three key pillars when I think of what a mastermind retreat is. And the first is dynamic participation. It's kind of what I call it. But essentially, a mastermind retreat does away with this like archaic model of there's one teacher, many students sitting and listening, right? And the premise is that you have a group of people who come together to learn a given skill set, but the goal is that everybody has something of value to add, right? And so that is the beauty of mastermind retreats. You're able to walk away with lasting friendships, lasting bonds, and equally as important, resources from each of the individuals that participate in the mastermind retreat with you. So that's kind of, pillar one for me. Pillar two really focuses on a tangible or actionable skill set. So going into a mastermind retreat, there is a goal that individuals set out for themselves. There's a goal that the retreat leader puts out there. And so it's very heavily content focused, right? And so that for me is what separates, a mastermind retreat from all other retreats, which is, there's a heavy emphasis on content versus just experience. I mean, obviously you have the experiences too. You're doing cool activities, you're doing everything else that you would in a regular retreat, but you're focusing on the content, on walking away with a tangible set of knowledge, right, that you've pre-planned ahead of time. So that's kind of pillar two for me. Pillar three of when I think, of what a mastermind retreat is, and this is a little bit technical, but when we think of the client journey, right, the way that it works for a mastermind retreat is chances are the participant that's joining, it's not their first time learning from the retreat leader. So they've either maybe, purchased an ebook, read some content online, or joined a training or a webinar, right? There's some piece of content that they've already consumed. And now what they want to do, the reason why they're attending a mastermind retreat is to get a more immersive experience, right? And I'm going to use this term quite often, and this is kind of the biggest differentiating factor, it's upsells. Somebody comes to you, right, and they're looking to join a mastermind retreat. They're participating in it, but think about the client journey, right, as a ladder. It could be that the retreat is the pinnacle, and this is your high ticket offering. People are learning from you, and now they're attending your retreat. Or it could be a stepping stone. It could be that during the retreat, you offer additional mentorship, right, to your community after the fact. And so mastermind retreats also, it's not this one and done thing, right? It's a part of the bigger client journey. And so that's kind of my three pillars for, how I think of a mastermind retreat and really what gets me super pumped about it.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I've ignorantly didn't really know a lot about mastermind retreats before talking to you. but I would be in the same boat. Like I wouldn't go on a mastermind retreat if I didn't like have a goal in mind. I didn't already know who I was going to be learning from. And what made you start Retreat Profits, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah.
No, it's totally okay. I kind of went through, so again, I was in corporate for quite a bit of time and I was almost doing two jobs, right? I had my day job and then I was hosting events all the time. So for employees, right? And these were bigger functions. And what I naturally gravitated to doing was I was always getting involved. Like Goldman Sachs has a 10,000 small business program. And I was constantly bringing entrepreneurs in. I was asking entrepreneurial questions and I was like, okay, my husband and I also made the decision to move from New York City and start traveling, but I had that perspective. Like I loved connecting with people. I loved hosting and organizing events. I'm like a big spreadsheet freak, like love my spreadsheets. And so I took some time away and started identifying like, what is it that I'm really, really passionate about? And I actually found myself in Costa Rica, which is my favorite place in the entire world. And I found myself there and I actually participated in a mastermind. And it led me to start my business and create this thing that I was super passionate about. And so that's kind of how I, got to Retreat Profits today.
Awesome. Hey, thank you. Well, glad we'll be talking to you as well. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. So, I mean, what are the key benefits of hosting and offering a mastermind retreat for maybe the people who aren't already, or maybe are thinking about it?
Yeah, so there's a few. I'll just give a few highlights, and if anyone has more questions, we can take a deeper dive. The first is obviously client transformation, right? A person is joining a mastermind retreat because it offers a more intimate and personal setting for growth and development. So that's kind of baseline, right, as a benefit. The next and one of the most important benefits is brand loyalty. I always say this sentence all the time because it's so important. But when you have a client or, a customer who's consuming your brand, but they don't feel like they're a part of it, maybe they'll buy one thing from you, but eventually they're going to walk. And so the beauty of retreats is it also gives you this more intimate personal connection with your community where you're able to meet with them to explain the ethos of your brand, right? What do you stand for? What are your principles? You're able to bond with your community. And essentially, they're walking away with a lifetime client, right? Because if I feel like I'm really part of your brand and I've connected with you as the leader, I'm going to want to be with you on kind of the entire journey together. So brand loyalty is super, super, super important. The next piece, which I've talked about, I'm going to continue talking about, it's the opportunity for upsells and sales, right? When we think of a retreat, generally speaking, people think they're making money just off of ticket sales, and that's not the case, right? You can make a profit on the ticket sales, and that's awesome. But if we think of the bigger client journey, you can offer additional mentorship, and you can do that on the spot, right? As individuals are attending your event. So, additional sales, upsells, and we'll get into a bit more of that later. And I would say the last piece, and equally as important, is around content and social proof. So from a technical standpoint, right, I mentioned that when we think of retreats, we think of them as, there's an educational element to it. So you as a retreat leader can easily hire a videographer who's going to record this content for you. And now you've got an evergreen product, right? You can share that with your community that didn't attend the event. You can make a training out of it. Or maybe it could just be for self-development, right? You can look at the content that you're providing and see what the reactions were. What were the questions? What else can you offer, right, as part of mentorship to your people? So that's kind of the technical piece of content. But then you also have the social proof. People who join your retreat, they're having a blast. What is the next thing they're going to do? They're going to hop on social media. They're going to write on Instagram, right? Start putting out posts on Facebook. They're going to, talk to their family members, their friends. And we as business leaders, this is the main thing that we're out for. We're trying to get true, honest feedback through word of mouth. Like there's nothing more important out there to see that our community is happy and they're enjoying themselves. And they're also tagging your business, your brand. And so that's another huge, huge benefit of mastermind retreats. So those are like 4 or 5 to highlight.
They're great. I mean, the customer loyalty and the upsells, they go hand in hand, right? Like if it's
For
a
sure.
loyal customer, they're going to stay with you. They're going to keep buying from you.
Definitely.
And yeah, word of mouth is just going to increase your customer loyalty and your customer base. So
You're
they all
right,
kind
Keri.
of like tie into each other. So what sets apart a profitable retreat from maybe like one that isn't? That's a big question, but you know numbers. So
Yeah. I would say, it's funny because you mentioned I know numbers and you think budget, but really a lot of this is like money mindset, less than the actual numbers. And so, for me, I would say in order to create a profitable retreat, you have to focus on the foundations. So as retreat leaders, honestly, just as human beings, we have this tendency to gravitate towards like the shiny object syndrome, right? Like, what is the most fun thing that I can do today, right? If you have 1,000 emails, you're like, oh, I'm not focusing on that right now, right? And so it's kind of the same thing. You want to plan a retreat and you go for the most exciting thing, which is let me find a really cool venue, right? Let me figure out the food that we're eating, like who's the caterers that we're going with, the activities that we're doing. And all of that is great. And there is a time for that. But first, you have to start with the foundations, right? If you've already booked your venue before you've established your retreat budget, you're now starting to back into profit. And that generally doesn't work. And so I would say start with the retreat foundations, figure out what your retreat budget is, create a retreat theme, right? If people don't know, maybe the really cool, venue that you got in Costa Rica may sell itself, but it's really hard to do marketing if people don't understand why they're coming, to visit you in this different country. So, you have your retreat budget, you have your retreat theme. And then most importantly, you have to validate the idea. You may think that you're creating something incredible, but maybe that's not what your ideal client wants today. And so you have to ask all the right questions before you jump in and book, all the really cool things and activities. There's a time and a place for it. So I would say the mindset is you should never be backing into your profit. You should plan ahead, figure out what your budget is, right? And that's what's going to set aside a profitable retreat. And people may be happy, right? You can go the shiny object route and people are going to join your retreat. They're going to have an awesome time, but that isn't what guarantees profit, Keri.
That makes sense. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's funny that you really, when you say profit, you literally just immediately like by default think like numbers and budgeting, et cetera. But there's like so much more to it.
Yeah.
So the next question I have is, are there any common pitfalls from a financial perspective that you see retreat leaders fall into when they are planning their retreats? So I guess
I've alluded to the first one, which is around validation. If you're not going to ask your ideal client, right? For example, on pricing. So let's say you have an idea of where you're going, how long the retreat is, and a general theme. And you go ahead and you price that off the top of your head, this ideal number that you're going for. You may get lucky and you may have people buy into it, but I would say 9 times out of 10, you're either overpricing your retreat or you're underpricing your retreat. And in both cases, and if you're underpricing, you're missing out. And if you're overpricing, you're not going to fill the seats. So I would say retreat validation and asking the right questions, putting out a survey is super, super important. So that's probably pitfall 1. Pitfall 2, and this is a funny one because when I was coming into the industry, and this is maybe from my old banking mindset, I was so surprised that this came up all the time, where you have incredible retreat leaders that do not pay themselves for their time. And it's, again, this concept of when you think of sales from profit from a retreat, you're only thinking about the sales that you're making, but you're not setting aside in your budget your own compensation. And so what I always have my clients think about is, if you were to meet with somebody for an hour and give them a one-on-one consultation, how much would you charge them? Take that and extrapolate that into a 3-day event, a 7-day event, right? You're spending almost 8 to 10 hours giving it your all, your time, your energy, right? Your passion, but then you're charging $0. And so that was a funny one for me where I was like, oh boy, like I think it takes a reminder for people to understand that you should, and Keri, like part of it is numbers, but the bigger ticket thing here is the fact that if you can grow a sustainable business, right, you can help more people.
Yeah.
And so maybe the first time around, you're not charging anything for your time and you're having a great trip and all of that's awesome. But 5 years down the line, can you sustain your business if you're not thinking about the numbers and the profit as well, right? And so the two go hand in hand. It's not, we're not just talking about numbers today, we're talking about helping your community.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need to have a sustainable business. So I would say, that's a common pitfall, one of the key pitfalls that I was probably most surprised about when I was initially kind of coming into the industry. I'm thinking of another good one to share with you. Maybe not a pitfall, but this kind of goes back to brand loyalty. So what ends up happening is, let's say you've planned this incredible retreat and you've filled 75% of this, spots, and there's a week left before your retreat. Your gut instinct is to say, I just want to break even. I'm going to cut the price down to, just my break even amount, and let me fill those last seats. What you don't think about when you do that, and many retreat leaders do this, right? It's a natural human instinct to say, let me just, get by without, let me cut my losses.
Right.
What you're not thinking about is, let's say you charged all the individuals prior to this $4,000 for your retreat. Your break even is $2,000. Well, what happens to all these other people who paid $4,000 and now see that on Instagram, you're advertising last seats for $2,000? They're not happy.
No.
They're definitely not happy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this common thing where we're like, okay, well, our gut is telling us, let's just do that. But there's more unique ways to address kind of these type of situations. For example, you can offer like a bring a friend discount. And you can take that same incentive and offer it to the rest of the group that's already joined. You can tell them that if they bring a friend, that friend can come at half the rate, right? And there's all these cool different tricks to do that. But that I would say is maybe like a common mindset pitfall that is also financially related and can really, really hurt brand loyalty.
That makes sense. Yeah. And the next question is like, what, I guess, strategies you want to share with the community for planning a profitable retreat? But it sounds like from your previous answer, you should, I guess, survey your clients kind of first and foremost and figure out your profit margins and like don't over or undercharge. You shouldn't just like, freak out the last minute if your spots aren't filled.
Yeah. And maybe you do freak out.
Yeah, you do.
Better solutions for how to solve that. So
yeah,
for sure, Keri, I would say you've highlighted the key items, right? And so maybe what I'll focus on is the mindset piece. Everything that we've talked about today, and this is when we talk about mastermind retreats, and in general, when we talk about a successful business, it's not a one and done event. And I'll explain why. You can do that, but profits really come as you scale. And so if, I talked about the importance of even your first profitable retreat, you have to focus on the foundations, but it's your first time around, right? You are creating a retreat sales page, right? You are putting together maybe your first email marketing campaign, maybe even your first social media campaign, right? All of this takes a lot of time. And so time equals money. And so let's say you've invested all this time for just one retreat. Well, the scale isn't there, right?
True.
So what ends up happening is if you can build these foundational items out, the first time around and then use them over and over and over again, that's where what we call economies of scale happening. So it's a mindset thing. If you're going in for one retreat that you think is going to make you thousands of dollars, like it might, but really the goal is to create a sustainable business where a retreat is part of your revenue line items consistently, and you build out the foundation that will help you get there. Right.
So the third, fourth, fifth retreat's not going to be all of the work you put in as the first one, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah. As with anything, right? When we learn something the first time around, we're like, oh, damn, that was hard. And then with time, right, things just get a lot easier. So I would say, Keri, like you highlighted retreat validation. I talked about the mindset piece, and the last piece, which, sometimes I feel like a parrot, but I have to, because this is really what makes me tick, it's the upsells. It's the unique proposition where you have a group of people who traveled to be with you, to learn from you, and they're physically sitting in front of you. you want to ask them questions. You want to know what additional handholding they need, what additional mentorship they need. And so when we think about, making a profit on the retreat, we've now talked about a few things, right? We've talked about on the front end, right? On ticket sales, but also charging your fee for your time and your services. And then also figuring out ways to get your clients what they need, which is essentially additional support. And it's a lot harder to do via computer screen. And it's a lot easier to do when you're actually bonding with somebody and learning what they need and building something around them. And you can offer that on the day of the retreat.
Awesome. And I guess the last question then, I mean, you kind of already touched on one, but are there any key marketing tactics that Mastermind retreat leaders could use to help filling up their retreats, aside from, you already touched on the, buy one, a friend kind of offer, but is there anything else you want to?
For sure. I'll start with my favorite. And there's a reason why this one's my favorite. So it's called the Waitlist Strategy. And the reason why I'm starting with this one, the reason why this one makes me tick is because it brings home the point that you can never start marketing too early. So the Waitlist Strategy begins when you really only have a few ideas and nothing even booked. Right. So let's say that you're having a retreat in Costa Rica. It's going to happen in January. And the theme of your retreat is, that skill set that you want somebody to learn is, let's say, healthy cooking and adapting a healthier lifestyle. Right. So you've got your theme. You can already start going out to your group on social media. You can already start reaching out to your inner circle and bring out, start sharing the buzz. See if people are gaining interest. And if they are gaining interest, you give them the opportunity to opt into your email list for an incentive. And that incentive could be, hey, you're going to be the first ones to find out when registration opens. So maybe it's early booking, right?
Sure.
Or maybe it's you're going to have the cheapest, early bird pricing available to you before anyone else even has that. And so the key here is you have nothing to lose. You haven't booked anything yet. You don't even have a sales page up, but you can already start marketing because you're growing your list. And when the time comes, these are going to be the first individuals that you reach out to offer your retreat. So I would say Waitlist Strategy, easiest and all-time favorite, right?
Another and you're also like growing your email list at the same time.
Yeah. Another one that I can share, which is what I don't know what it's called in the industry. Like in general, I think everyone's got a different name for this. I call it the Hotlist Strategy because that's just fun for me. When you think of, marketing your retreat, there's different ways to do it. You can create your email list, right? You're going to reach out to your social media followers. But what is often left on the table is your inner network. So what I have my clients always do, what the hot list is you identify, let's say 15 to 20 individuals off the top of your head today that you think would be an ideal client for your retreat, and you write them down, right? And so these can be previous students of yours. They can be friends of yours. They can be whoever you think is going to benefit from attending this retreat. And what you're doing is you're going to build a separate, more personalized marketing campaign around these individuals. Why I say more personalized is you're going to be reaching out to them on the platform that you usually talk to them on, be it email or maybe on, Instagram, wherever it is. And you're going to be explaining to them that they are part of the inner circle. This is a select group that you thought about that you want to personally invite to your retreat. And you can then build an email sequence around them. Let's say they're interested. You can start, going in and sharing information on the retreat, giving them whatever it is that they need to overcome in order to sign up. And so I would say the Hotlist Strategy is one that I don't see implemented as often, but it's just because we forget that we have an inner circle, that we can reach out to first. So I would say the Hotlist Strategy, definitely. And maybe, Keri, I'll summarize with a more general principle, which is the importance of email marketing.
Okay.
We know how great social media is, truly, for building a community, for bonding with your community, for just about everything, right? Social media is an incredible platform. But what we sometimes forget about are that like old school ways do work. And email marketing, the reason why it works is if you think about like a general, let's call it like life cycle of a client before they book, on average, it takes at least 5 times for somebody to hear about your,
Wow.
offer before they're actually going to make a sale. And so what happens is you have this really cool story on Instagram, right? And maybe a post, and you're like, hey, why aren't people signing up? Well, the reason is you've probably not answered all the obstacles that they have in their head for coming, right? COVID being a big one today. So, what are the restrictions for traveling to this place? What are we going to do when we get there, right? What are all these different concerns that I may have thought about? And that is really difficult to answer just on social media. You can, but it's great to have that on multiple platforms. And so if you have an individual's email and the importance of, building your list, you can then reach out to them multiple times, answering the questions that they may have. And if you don't know what those questions are, going back to the retreat validation, ask, what are some of the hurdles that you are facing today? Are you interested in this type of event, right? If you ask all these questions, you know what all the reservations are from these potential clients of yours. You can go out and you can build an email sequence that helps them overcome some of those obstacles. So I would say I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of email marketing. And so I advocate that for all of my clients today who are looking to fill retreats.
That makes sense. And I think it's a good point. I mean, WeTravel also works with a lot of tour operators, and these like, $5,000-$6,000 trips, they're not like one click. Like people need like 5, 6, like 8 touch points before they decide like, hey, I'm going to go on this really expensive trip. So that totally plays in and makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great note to end on. So I know you have an offer for the WeTravel community. If you want to talk about that offer, and then I can also drop it in the chats, the links that follow.
That would be awesome, Keri. Yeah. So there's actually 2 things that RetreatProfits is offering for the WeTravel community. The first is a free 30-minute retreat evaluation. So this essentially is a free-for-all for retreat leaders who have questions on any step in the retreat planning journey. So be it how to price properly, different marketing tactics that they can use, how to create a retreat theme, right? The gamut. And so, or even any general questions. So you'll drop the link, but anyone can go ahead and sign up for that free 30-minute retreat evaluation. And honestly, Keri, you don't even have to be planning a retreat. We can also go through the process of designing, right, a retreat if somebody is interested or in those kind of beginning stages. So that works too. My only ask is just to leave a note in the comments when booking the call that this is, from the WeTravel community. So that's offer 1, and I'm super excited to meet everybody. And then the second offer is, a quick tangible one. So it's actually a 4-month retreat planning timeline. So again, for anybody who's interested in planning a mastermind retreat or already planning, it's basically my like A to Z methodology of all the steps that I take to plan a retreat. And so there's tons of pro tips that individuals can use, right? Basically from veterans in the field, different checklists. And so that also, Keri, if you can provide a link, everyone can access that as well.
I'll drop that too. Well, thanks so much. It was great to talk to you today, and I'm sure people will be looking forward to taking advantage of this. And if you have any questions, Victoria can be reached in the group, and she'll probably message too, so you can message her directly. But thanks
for sure. Thank you for having me, Keri. This was great.
All right. Nice talking to you.
Cheers.
Bye.